Zoom meetings. We've been unable to do face-to-face meetings, and that's been a challenge, especially for Alderman King and I, who have traditionally held a joint public safety meeting. And this year, unfortunately, due to the circumstances of the pandemic and because of our basically the sheer increase in shootings and carjackings in our respective wards, we're meeting in smaller community clusters. On December 4th, we had a meeting in the Douglas community. We're having this meeting this evening, and both Alderman King and I are committed to having these meetings in other parts of our wards. In fact, the next one for the 3rd ward will be in the Washington Park community, hopefully done with the support and collaboration of Alderman Jeanette Taylor. But the purpose of tonight's meeting is to let our constituents know the reality of what's going on in our respective communities, how the police have responded or not responded, what residents can do to protect themselves and the community. And for some of the time tonight, we will have representatives of the Grand Boulevard community to be the voice of everyone here, since not everyone is going to have an opportunity to speak. We had over 400 registrations, 185 of them directly from residents in the Grand Boulevard community. And for those looking for a definition of the boundaries of Grand Boulevard, it runs from basically 39th Street to 51st Street, from the Dan Ryan over to Cottage Grove. And within that boundary, we have 6 police beats. So tonight we will have presentations followed by a Q&A session. We're gonna open it up for questions to the constituents here. If you have a Q&A, you can put it in the Q&A box. If you have a question you don't wanna be live, put it in the Q&A box and we'll try to answer it. Or if you have a question and you want to be live, please use the raise your hand function, and someone that's working on the 3rd and 4th ward team will let us know. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to my partner, so to speak, in crime, Alderman Sophia King of the 4th ward. Alderman King.
Thank you, Alderman Dowell. As you mentioned, we have been holding these joint safety meetings in order to come together as a community to mitigate future incidents and to hear from the residents directly. We've been holding a number of these, as you've already said, and we work together, understanding that people don't know their boundaries and we don't expect them to, but live as a community. On tonight's agenda, we will hear from our district commander and our Area 1 detective commander directly about specific incidents of gun violence and carjacking and get an update on those incidents. They will also talk about trends and the district's response, but the majority of our time will be spent hearing from you directly as constituents. As Alderman Dowell mentioned, we had over 400 responses. And so in order to get feedback and have a fruitful conversation, we're going to elevate certain folks that were picked randomly to speak so that we can hear directly. And we're hoping their questions will reflect everybody's questions, but that will be what the majority of our time and conversation will be spent on. We hope that all the questions will be able to be asked, but if not, we certainly will continue to communicate with you beyond tonight, but we hope that this will be a very fruitful conversation and that we will learn from it and all of us will be safer for it. So Alderman Dowell, we'll turn it back over to you to introduce our guests. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman King. Want to introduce you guys. Most of you know him. He's fairly new, but not new anymore, really. Our 2nd District Commander, Joshua Wallace, and he will in turn introduce our other guests. Commander Wallace.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Commander Josh Wallace, the commander of the 2nd District. It is definitely a privilege to be here. My hope is that we can have a very fruitful dialogue, that I can answer your questions, your concerns, and let you know what route and what direction we're headed in 2021. With that being said, I'd like to introduce the commander of the Area 1 Detective Division, Jared Smith.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jared Smith. I'm the commander of the Area 1 Detective Division. So we have the principal follow-up on all the major crimes and the minor crimes where we have a complainant. So we'll have the shootings, we'll have the vehicular hijackings. So we'll be touching on all of those. And our sergeant from RBT was going to be talking more about the vehicular hijackings is Sergeant Joel Credit. Joel, if you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello. My name is Joel Credit. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, I'm assigned to Area 1 Property Crimes Unit. I'm the sergeant for the 2nd District, so I handle investigations involving robberies, burglaries, and thefts within the 2nd District.
Yeah,
Yes.
Would ask you to start with just an overall trend for the Grand Boulevard community, and then we'll go into the slides on the shooting.
All right. So overall, we've seen a trend in the Grand Boulevard in regards to violence and carjackings this year thus far. We are up in Grand Boulevard community alone. We're up 1 homicide for the year. We're up 6 homicides from 5 from last year. We are up 38 aggravated batteries, which is basically individuals being shot. We're up. Last year we were at 22. This year we're at 38. We are up tremendously though in offenders arrested with illegal firearms. So last year in the Grand Boulevard neighborhood, we arrested 26 individuals. This year, thus far, we've arrested 48 individuals. We're down slightly in armed robberies by about 5%. And the unfortunate number, which is a bit staggering even for me, is our vehicular hijackings. So last year, we were at 9 in Grand Boulevard. Right now, currently, we're at 29 in Grand Boulevard. So that is quite an increase. If you aren't aware, there's also a technology within the 2nd District called ShotSpotter. So for Grand Boulevard alone, so ShotSpotter, what it does, it registers the occurrences of gunshots. So ShotSpotter for Grand Boulevard is also increased by about 62% for the year, with 510 incidents of shots being fired from firearm. Ultimately, across Grand Boulevard, every single beat, which it consists of 6 beats, all 6 of the beats are up in regards to gunfire on their beats, especially beat 224, which has a staggering increase from 39 incidents last year to 112 incidents this year. Calls for service in Grand Boulevard, they're down slightly from last year to about 18,200. That's down from last year's 18,300 for the same time period. So overall, that's where we're at. Understandably, very concerning are the increase in crime. But also, I'm at least illegal firearms are being taken off the streets, which always lead to more crime.
James, can you begin to share, please? Commander?
Okay, so I want to talk about the shootings, but for all of the beats in
Excuse me, Commander, before you describe the shootings, can you give a general description of the boundaries of each beat as you start?
Okay, well, I have to hold on there.
Or the commander can do it for you.
Okay, yeah. If I don't have my beat maps on me. You want to start with the description of each beat? I mean, I can do it, no problem.
You have the slide. You can go back to Alderman Dowell, I think, right before.
Right, but you can't really read it.
Okay.
James, go back to the first, that
Yeah.
slide, right? So beat 213 looks like it runs from Pershing to 43rd, from the Dan Ryan over to, I think that's King.
Yep.
Well, actually, it actually goes up to 35th on the top end. Yeah, that box, it's a little further up in the corner on that box too. So it goes up to 35th. So all of these kind of cut in and out, you know, they're not going to be all perfect boxes. So so can we go back to the incidents for 213?
Next slide, please.
Okay. So, and that's one of two slides for 213 because we actually have 12 incidents. So, and let me just say from the beginning of all these beats, and because it's going to be the same for most of these beats. So like out of 45 shootings that we're going to be looking at, 28 of them are going to be suspended. And some of them are going to be suspended because we don't have any further information. You know, we tried to reach video, tried to get video, tried to identify the offender, and we just weren't able to. But out of those, 14 out of the ones that are in the suspended status are because the victim would not participate. And we actually get that a lot, where the victim doesn't want to, you know, if the victim was on something that he shouldn't have been on, or he knows the offender and they were doing, for whatever reason, it's, you know, it's different reasons that they won't participate. They won't tell us what happened. They won't identify anybody. So that's not all of them, but we do have we have a good portion of those on all the beats. So for 213, we have, like I said, we have quite a few that are suspended. We have some that are still ongoing. The 39th, and if I'll go in order, the 39th in Michigan, we've got no progress on that one. The 40th in Prairie, this is one of the ones where we have a victim who's not participating. And as a matter of fact, he lied about his name and about a bunch of different stuff. So when that happens, and you know that happens, we're stuck. So we actually have two on the 4000 block of Prairie. They're a month apart though. So that investigation is ongoing. The 42nd in Wabash, that is suspended. The July 12th on 41st in Indiana, that is suspended. The July 8th, 42nd in Michigan, that's another one where the victim won't cooperate. And on the July 4th one, this was a known offender, and that was one with an arrest and prosecution. That's the 4200 block of Prairie. And then the 4000 block of Prairie on June 18th, that was the result of a dice game. That's no cooperation from that victim. The 3700 block of State, we weren't able to get any additional information. And then you go to February 19th, the 3900 block of Michigan. That's actually a homicide. And there was an arrest and prosecution on that one. That was a narcotics deal at the Amber Inn. So that is closed in the arrest and prosecution. The 3500 block of State from February 1st, that is suspended. No further details. Weren't able to come up with anything on that one. And the January, now we're back to the beginning of the year, 3500 on Wabash, we got another victim who's not going to cooperate. So that's 213. So you want to go back to, we want to do the complete beat description for each of them? Alderman?
Yes, I want to have the beat description for each beat when you get to it. So Can you describe the boundary?
Got it.
But when you look at Grand Boulevard for 214, it's basically 39th Street to 43rd Street, King to Cottage Grove.
Thank you, Commander.
All right, so for 214, we got no cooperation on the 400 block of East Pershing from the victim. The 600 block of East 41st Street, that's an ongoing investigation. The third one is the 700 block of East 42nd Street. That's a homicide investigation. We've got some pretty good leads on that one. We're still working those. So the homicides take a lot longer, but we're working out. We've got some good information on that. So that's moving on, I think, pretty nicely. The 600 block of East 40th Street, back in August, is that's suspended. The 400 East block of Pershing, that one is also suspended. And this one is another one where we got a known offender. They're in an altercation, but he's not telling us the truth. We have some video. It's not matching up with his statement. It's suspended. We can't go any further with that one. The next one is the 500 block of East 42nd Place. That one, that video, that investigation is still ongoing. They're still trying to run some stuff down on that. The 600 block East of 40th Street is suspended. That's another no cooperation from the victim. The 400 block of East 43rd Street, that's no cooperation from the victim. And that's it for 214. Thank you. All right, so for beat 215, we have very few incidents on beat 215. And one of them happens to be
I'm sorry to break in again. I
sorry.
need you all to define the boundaries of the beat. So Commander, if you could define the boundary.
So all right, I will. 215 is 43rd Street to 47th Street, the Dan Ryan to King Drive.
All right, 215. We got 4600 block of Wabash. That is a homicide. We've got some, we're working on that one. So that's still, it's an ongoing investigation. The 4400 block of King Drive. This one we believe is related to the carjackings. Going to have Sergeant Credit jump in. I'm not sure where you wanted to do the carjacks. We're going to do that a little later after the shootings, or is it going to be later, or when did we want to go into the?
Right, we can add value and information here on this one, but there is a section towards the end of the presentation on carjackings in general.
Okay.
Sergeant Credit?
Yes. What incident in particular are you would you like to speak of?
4400 South King Drive, the one that Commander was just talking about.
So on that one, I can take the lead on that one, because that one never went to their side as far as it being a carjacking, but we still have it as a shooting, and just so that everyone will understand. So when a robbery was announced, or like he says, give me the keys, or he says, give me something, then we can go ahead and classify that as a robbery, but that's not what we had in this case. But it fits, but it does fit a pattern in that these guys were targeting Uber drivers and Lyft drivers. And when they come to either drop off Uber Eats, when they come to drop off the food, or in some instances, when they were doing these carjackings, they'll get the car, like they'll get an Uber driver's car, and they'll get his phone, then use that phone to order another driver, and then carjack that guy. So we believe that this fits into that. We're still working on that, but it's not officially a robbery because they never did announce it, or at least not that this victim understood it, because there may have been a little bit of a language barrier there. And the other two are ongoing investigations. You got East on 47th Street and then 46th and Wabash.
All right, so for 221, we're going to be looking at 43rd Street to 47th Street, King Drive to Cottage Grove.
221, there were very few incidents on 221's beat, and the last one, the most recent one being back on November 3rd. And all of these, I'm sorry, only one of these is still in progress. The other three are currently suspended. Now, these are not suspended because of lack of cooperation, but a lot of these are where the victim just heard shots and felt pain. So, you know, they were not able to make any kind of a description of the offender. We weren't able to get any kind of video or anything that would help further the investigation on those cases.
Commander, can you tell us which ones are ongoing, which ones are suspended? I know you said one was ongoing, or just point that
Only
out.
one is ongoing, and that's the November 20th one. And
Okay.
that's the 4600 block of Champlain. So then the other ones, the 600 block of East 47th, 600 block of East 44th, 700 block of East 47th, and the 46th and Evans. The balance of those are all suspended.
Thank you.
All right, so are you going to go 223 is going to be 47 to 51, King Drive to Cottage Grove.
All right, 223, we have, we'll just go in order because these kind of are all a little different. The 47th and Vincennes is the most recent one. That's November 20th. That one, they're still working it, but right now we don't have any information. The victim is not able to provide any description, and we don't have any cameras that are showing anything either. The 500 block of East 47th Street, that one is suspended because the victim is not cooperating with us. No, wait, yeah. The 50th and King Drive, that one is charged. So we have an offender charged with 4 counts of attempted murder. But what that was is shots fired at the police. They were going to take that offender into custody. He fired shots hitting the vehicle and striking one of the TAC officers in the deuce. This was right over on King Drive. That's going back to June 15th. So that offender is in custody. The 47th in St. Lawrence, we have, they put out a seeking to identify on a vehicle, which is where we've got a video that shows a car that's related to the shooting, but we don't have any further information on that. So right now that's suspended. 47th and Forestville was another thing where we've got a car on video, but we're still trying to locate that. So that one is also suspended. The 47th and Evans is a homicide that is cleared with an arrest and prosecution. So like the commander said earlier, there are very few homicides in the Bronzeville area, and this one is one of the ones that is where we have an arrest made on it, and we're making very good progress on the other ones in that area. But that's a side note. On the 47th and Vincennes, back at the beginning, back in February, we have a we got ex-boyfriend, new boyfriend. They get into a confrontation. then they pull out the offender pulls out a gun and shoots the other guy, but they didn't want to press any charges at all. So that one is executive closed, which means that the victim did not want to press charges in that incident.
All right, so beat 224 is 47 to 51, basically the Dan Ryan to King Drive.
All right. 224, we got 4900 of 4900 block of Calumet. That is currently suspended. We have the 4900 block of Michigan. This is another one where we've got some problems with the victim's story, but we're stuck with it because we can't break it. So that one is suspended. The 300 block, East block of 47th Street. That one is an ongoing investigation. It's relatively recent, November 17th. The 500 block of King Drive is an ongoing investigation. The 4700 block of Michigan, the victim does not want to participate. The next one is the same way. 4900 block of Calumet, victim will not participate. Same thing, 300 block, 49th Street. You got two victims there that are not cooperative. And the 4700 block, the 4700 one in Indiana, this is one that we believed happened in the first district, if I'm not taken. Isn't that right, Randall Wallace?
That is correct. That did occur.
Yeah, and I thought
in the
that
first district.
I thought this one got moved. So I'm not sure why it's still showing up here, but we're pretty sure that actually happened in one and not here. But that's another victim who's not telling us the whole story. But we're able to find his car in the video in the first district.
All right, the purpose of the purpose of this graphic is basically just to show you where the second district stands compared to other districts in the city. As you can see, in 2019, there were 71 shootings. We've gone up in 2020 to 109. But our position remains relatively the same or below, actually, other districts. Although this is still not something that we want to see continue, we are definitely in a better position than many districts across the city. Next slide. Commander?
You want me to speak on this or Commander Smith?
Either Smith or Credit.
All right.
Yeah, we'll have Joel Credit jump in with the hijackers.
Yeah, so as the slide shows, there's been a huge increase in carjackings. And this is reflective of a citywide increase in vehicular hijackings that have occurred this year. There's probably numerous reasons for this, but several might be that these newer vehicles have improved technology, making vehicles harder to steal. So criminals have resorted to hijacking the vehicle. Once the vehicle is taken, depending on the vehicle, offenders can reprogram the vehicle, giving them access and ability to restart the vehicle on their own. Many of these cars that are taken in the hijackings are used to commit additional crimes such as robberies and shootings. Also, during this pandemic, many people have been wearing masks, including the offenders, and it's made it more difficult for victims to identify these offenders and for us to charge the offenders. In addition, many offenders are juveniles, and it's possible that they're committing these carjackings as part of some kind of initiation ritual or possibly just for fun. So Regarding the carjackings in the district, it's definitely increased. I put out several patterns. I'd like to speak of some prevention techniques that might help out citizens. Carjackings is one of the scariest things that can happen to a driver. If you are approaching your vehicle, as you approach your vehicle, pay attention to your surroundings. If you see a suspicious person or vehicles, do not go to your vehicle. Walk to a safe place and call police. Have your key or remote ready to unlock your vehicle. The more time you take, the greater the risk of being carjacked. Always drive with your doors locked and windows up. Pay attention to other vehicles which are following you. If you think you are being followed, drive in and out of high traffic parking lots such as shopping centers or drive to a police station. Avoid driving in the far right lane. This lane is most vulnerable to carjackings. Always leave room between your car and the car in front of you in case you need to escape. Carjackers often lightly rear end or tap their targeted victims, hoping the victims will immediately get out and inspect the damage. If you do not feel safe, drive to a police station. Above all, if you are carjacked, do not resist. Abandon your vehicle, run, call 911. Protecting your property is not worth any physical injury. Our department is a dedicated vehicular hijacking task force that's been up and running throughout the year. They investigate hijackings that occur throughout the city. This task force is made up of police detectives and personnel from the FBI. Cases may be referred to the U.S. Attorney's Office for Federal Prosecution. Vehicle hijacking is the highest priority of Area 1 Property Crimes Unit. At this time, Area 1 Property Crimes Unit, which works out of 51st and Leavenworth above the 2nd District, is in the process of assembling a team of detectives dedicated to investigating vehicular hijackings within the area. There will be police officers assigned to this team to assist the detectives with their investigation. I handle the 2nd District. 2nd District comprises Grand Crossing, but basically from 31st south to 60th, from the Dan Ryan to the lakefront. Our clearance rate for this year, just detectives solving the cases for vehicular hijackings that occurred this year, is roughly 27.5%, meaning the cases have been solved. I issue community alerts based upon crime trends. I've issued several recent community alerts involving vehicular hijackings. One was on November 13th involving carjackings. One was in the 4300 block of South Vincennes on November 12th. Another one was in the 4200 block of South King Drive, November 12th. Another one was in the 700 block East 44th Street on November 12th. In these incidents, 2 to 3 male offenders approached a lone male victim that is sitting inside or entering his vehicle. The offenders displayed a handgun and ordered the victim to exit his vehicle. The offenders then entered the victim's vehicle and drove from the area. So these community alerts are issued and put out to news affairs so people in the community are aware of it. The CAPS office in the 2nd District has them, so they're able to relate this information to community, so they're aware of what's going on. Also, with these community alerts, a crime pattern is issued, and it's given to the detectives and also the officers that work in the 2nd District, so they can have missions or kind of allocate their resources to where these carjackings are happening. Again, I said I put out several recent community alerts regarding these vehicular hijackings. What's going on, and a lot of times there's hijackings of citizens, and then what's been increasing is rideshare company drivers being carjacked, Uber and Lyft specifically. So on November 18th, I issued another community alert for vehicular hijackings. These incidents happened one in the 4300 block of South St. Lawrence on November 8th, another one in the 800 block of East 46th Street on November 11th, another one in the 4900 block of South Prairie on November 18th. So in these incidents, a rideshare company driver arrived at the requested location to pick up a customer. One offender entered the rear seat of the victim's vehicle, displayed a handgun, and ordered the victim to exit his vehicle. A second offender is standing outside the vehicle and then takes property from the victim's pockets. The second offender then enters the victim's vehicle and drives from the scene. And again, these are to alert the community and rideshare drivers of what's going on, and so they're aware of it. And also, so our department can allocate resources to these areas to catch these offenders. On December 26th, I issued another community alert this involving vehicular hijackings. These were had female victims. One of the incidents was in the 4200 block of South Prairie on December 15th. Another one is in the 4000 block of South Wabash on December 21st. A third one was in the 4900 block of South Ellis on December 21st. And the fourth one was in the 4000 block of South Lake Park Avenue on December 21st. So in these incidents, 3 to 4 male offenders approach a lone female victim that is either sitting inside or just outside her vehicle. They display a handgun and order the victim to exit her vehicle. The defenders then enter the victim's vehicle and drive from the area. So in addition to these patterns I put out, we've had several arrests over the past couple months that involve vehicular hijackings. And just to go over some of the details, so you're aware that we are investigating these, we are charging these offenders, and they will be facing prosecution. In one incident, November 12th, at approximately 6:30 in the evening, in the 700 block of East 44th Street, the victim was sitting inside his parked vehicle with his windows down and was listening to music. At this time, 2 male offenders approached the victim's vehicle and pointed a black handgun at the victim's face. The offenders ordered the victim to exit the vehicle and threatened to shoot him. The victim exited the vehicle and both offenders entered the vehicle and fled the scene. Several hours later, police officers curbed the victim's vehicle and took the juvenile driver into custody. The victim later viewed a photo lineup and positively identified the juvenile as the offender who was pointing the gun at him. The juvenile offender was apprehended and was positively identified by the victim and was charged with aggravated vehicular hijacking and possession of a stolen motor vehicle. Another incident on November 21st at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4700 block of South Woodlawn, an aggravated vehicular hijacking took place. An Uber driver picked up 2 male customers with his vehicle. Inside the vehicle, one of the males demanded the victim's property and placed a handgun to the victim's head. The offenders took the victim's cell phone and wallet and attempted to drive off in the victim's vehicle. The incident was captured on a surveillance camera that was recording the inside of the victim's vehicle. The detective reviewed the video and learned that one of the offenders removed his mask during the incident, and a clear image of his face was captured. The victim later positively identified a suspect in a photo lineup as the person who pointed the handgun at him during the incident. An adult offender, 23 years old, was apprehended on December 15th and charged with aggravated vehicular hijacking and armed robbery. In addition, he was charged with several other incidents of vehicular hijacking in the city and the suburbs. On November 29th, at approximately 7 p.m. in the 3100 block of South Giles, the Lyft driver was the victim of an aggravated vehicular hijacking. 2 offenders ordered the victim from his vehicle while displaying a semi-automatic handgun. The juvenile offender was positively identified and charged with aggravated vehicular hijacking on December 21st. This offender was also charged with vehicular hijackings for an incident on the north side in the 2600 block in North Lakeview. Another incident, December 7th, at roughly 2 p.m. in the 3100 block of South Michigan. The victim had exited her vehicle to pump gas. An offender approached the victim, indicated he was armed with a firearm, and told the victim to drop her keys. The incident was captured on surveillance video. The offender was apprehended in the area and positively identified by the victim. This offender was charged with attempted aggravated vehicular hijacking. So those are several incidents that were reported and solved by detectives. As part of our investigation, the initial investigation consists of interviews with the victim and witnesses and recovering any surveillance video that might have captured the incident. Once the stolen vehicle is recovered, our forensic services section processes the vehicle for fingerprints and biological evidence. If and when a suspect has been identified, lineups will be conducted with the victim and possible witnesses. Evidence which is gathered by detectives is then presented to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office for prosecution. And our goal is to hold the offenders accountable. So we want to identify the suspect, get as much evidence, present it, get it charged, and then see a successful prosecution. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Sergeant. We have a number of questions, both in the chat box, which we're going to start with, and then we're going to go over to the attendees where we have a hand up. Mr. Robert, are you reading these questions or?
Sure, Alderman. So the first question is from Dr. Sean Timms. She'd like to know about the loitering in front of 200 cut rate liquors on 47th in Indiana.
All right, so
Actually, had her hand up, so. Ms. Timms, can you unmute Ms. Timms? Dr. Timms, I'm sorry.
She had put her hand down, Alderman, and just left it in the
All
chat.
right, just answer. You can go ahead, Commander.
So I am aware of the issue that we have at 200 liquors. We do have it is a hotspot from Indiana to King Drive. This should be enforced on all three of my watches within my district. I have a new initiative going forward into 2021 because I know that it is a nuisance. I'm contacted daily from different residents. It really comes down to accountability and holding those who work for me accountable, because we have more than enough eyes on that location where this should never be an issue, in my opinion. So it really comes down to accountability, me holding my supervisors accountable to ensure that the officers are doing what they need to do, because we have what we need to do strict enforcement. And if, to keep the nuisance moving, of keeping it moving along, where 47th Street, in my opinion, should always remain clear for the citizens to walk up and down. So, it's truly come to my attention this year, being the year that it has been, that the enforcement that I expect is not taking place. It's definitely being addressed. I'm working on a different strategy for 2021, and I understand your concern. Believe me, because Alderman Dowell calls me all the time in regards to the same issue, and I jump on it right away.
All right, just moving around from the questions. What kind of cars are typically targeted for the vehicle hijackings, Sergeant Credit? What kind of cars are the offenders targeting?
You know what? I think any car could be targeted, especially if they're going to use that to commit other crimes, because that car, whatever the car may be, would give them the opportunity to commit that crime. But, specifically higher end cars may be targeted because of their value. Other cars, has been in the news recently, such as Jeeps and Dodge type vehicles, are being targeted because they're able to be reprogrammed. So that's something that's already been out in the media that might be a reason why those specific vehicles might be targeted. But any vehicle would be a possible target for a carjacker, because it would give them the ability to use that vehicle to commit other crimes.
If I could jump in real quick, Alderman, on the carjacking, because that goes into the conversation we were having earlier. Because also, a lot of criminals are lazy. And so what we used to have in the past, and we still have it, is the people who warm their cars up. Those become targets for carjackers. And don't let me, and I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't warm your car up, but what I'm saying is when you do that, you have to be aware of your surroundings. Just as with any of these instances, you have to be aware of your surroundings. So people who, like, when you leave your car running, you get a lot of people who, leave the key in the car when they're going to get gas. These are things we can't afford to be lax like that anymore, because that's where people are looking. And some of these are crimes of opportunity. Like the good sergeant was saying, some cars are targeted just because they're easy sales and they want those cars. But then there are other cars that they're taking because they take these cars and they commit crimes with them. So they'll take this car and they'll use it, and then they'll go do a shooting. Or they'll take a car. We just had one in the 9th district. They took a car and then went right around the corner to take another car because they weren't, I guess they didn't like the car that they took originally enough. They wanted to take another one right away. So, all of these, these things, I want to really emphasize being aware of your surroundings, especially this time of year, when you want to warm your car up and just in general.
Okay, we had a hand up from Omega Cruz. Ms. Cruz?
That was an accident, sorry.
Okay, then from Guion Foreman.
Thank you, Alderman. Commander, I heard you speak a little bit about, some of the efforts on 47th Street. Specifically, you spoke about King Drive to Indiana, but what about 47th Street as a whole? Is different hot spots throughout, basically all the way from Cottage Grove to the Dan Ryan at different spots. And you talked about the accountability, but can you talk a little bit more about some of the efforts that you guys are doing and what we can do to assist?
Well, my goal and my plan for 2021 is the initiative for between Cottage Grove and basically State Street is to have the same dedicated officers out there working on each watch. And a lot of it, really, we got to get back to the old school approach of community engagement, getting out of our vehicles, getting to know not only the citizens, but getting to know the guys who keep up the nonsense and whatnot that's going on. And what I really am going to need from the community is because I really want my officers to stop in the businesses and engage with the community stakeholders and form relationships. I really want the community to feel safe and welcomed and trust that these officers have their best interests at hand and be willing to give them some tips and clues as to this is what's going on when you're not around, or this is what you should look for when you're doing your foot patrol up and down. Because I absolutely agree. 47th there's an issue from all, honestly, between Lake Park and Wabash, there are issues. But I really feel that old school policing back to engaging with the community is hopefully will be the answer that, I can turn things around in a more make it a more positive atmosphere along 47th Street.
Thank you.
All right, a question from Wendy Bond. With all these suspended cases, what is your police procedure for reviewing all these suspended cases, or do they all just go unsolved? Victims are reluctant in the beginning, may change their mind later. And also, Robin Pettit wants to know, when victims are not participating in most cases, does it mean that it goes straight to suspended?
No. So I'll answer the second question first. So I've instructed our guys, even when we have victims who are not participating, we still are trying to identify the shooters because we can try to do what we can as far as getting them charged for shooting a gun on a public way. And we want them identified any way it goes. We prefer for the victim to press charges, but we try to go forward without them if we can. But we always want to try to get these guys identified. So it doesn't just go straight to suspended. I won't allow it to go straight to suspended, especially because the victim says initially that they may not want to do anything, because we have had it where they'll come back later and say that they will. So there's no time thing as far as if they come back a week later and say that hey, well, I do know who it is. All right, we want to go, because the bottom line is to get these guys off the street. We want these shooters. So when they get suspended means exactly that. It's not closed. The other ones, you notice I said when there was an arrest, that's cleared and closed. or if the person says, well, hey, I identified the shooter, this is the person who shot me, but I don't want to press charges. That's what we call exceptionally clear closed. That means that they're saying they don't want to go any further. But still with those, they can come back later and say, you know what, I do want to press charges. And we go forward from there. So that the cases aren't, they're not in any kind of graveyard. That just means we don't have anything on it right now. Did I answer both of the questions?
Yes.
Can I jump in, Alderman?
Yes, Alderman King.
Just to clarify on the suspended, so I heard you say that that if their witness doesn't come forward, that you will continue to investigate if you have other evidence, let's just say. If you do continue to investigate with other evidence without the witness, is it still suspended, or is it suspended meaning you really don't have any credible way to prosecute anything right at that moment?
No. So what a suspended means is it does mean what you said. We don't have anything to go forward with it right at that moment. But if they're still working on a case, they, like we're looking at, so to put a technical point on it, if there's a shooting and then the victim's not going to participate, but let's say we have video that clearly identifies an offender, we can sue him shooting a gun, and then there are shell casings discovered, so we know that that was a gun and not a BB gun or whatever. So then we have something. There's a charge that we can go for that's called a reckless discharge. You got to aggravated discharge, but we don't need that shooting victim. We can prove that this person discharged the gun. Okay. So then we could charge them that way, and then we could close the case with that. But then if we don't have that, then that will be just suspended, which means that's pending any kind of investigative leads. Somebody comes forward, something like that. Those things happen too.
Thank you, Commander. Thank you.
Marcellus Moore, followed by Michelle Troop, and followed by Jonathan Johnston, followed by Robin and Pam Johnson.
Well, good evening, Alderman Dowell and Alderman King. Thank you for putting this together, and thank you to the representatives of the Chicago Police Department. Marcellus Moore, I have the honor of being the chair of the 4th Ward Grand Boulevard Advisory Council that I've had the pleasure to work with Alderman King with, and frankly, people within the 3rd Ward, given some of our crossover. And so over the past 6 or 7 months, I've had the opportunity to hear from a number of people on our council and people in the neighborhood. And, first of all, thank you all again for coming out and sharing information on the incidents and things that have gone on. But one of the things I'm trying to understand is how can we work together to, one, make these conversations a bit more productive, just in that, frankly, it's informative to know what's going on and to hear the status of investigations, but spending 30 or 40 minutes hearing about 20 cases where people aren't being cooperative doesn't help us kind of get to the core of the problems and move forward on how to support and strengthen the community. So then I hear the talk about community engagement, and I completely agree. Like, I recognize and we recognize Chicago police should not be in this alone, and you need the support of the community and the people who are here. But understand, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but understand some of the frustrations when we have these meetings. We hear things like, watch your surroundings. And we see these statistics about these huge escalations in crimes, but we don't see necessarily any increased presence in our communities. But, civil unrest downtown, and I had someone mention this, you see civil unrest downtown from 6 months ago, and there's still a flashing light on every other corner. Granted, downtown's a little different than Grand Boulevard, but for those of us who live here, it's still a comparison we make. There was a day, I think it's that November 30th date, there were 3 carjackings within a 24-hour period within 6 or 7 blocks of one another. And on a similar meeting, we're told those are crimes of opportunity. May be the case, but you know, as residents, we'd like to understand what's being done to prevent more 3 carjackings in a single day in a 6-block radius from occurring. We hear things like call, 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 you know, please call the police. And I get it, the higher call rates will get the higher level of attention. But I hear constantly people talking about they are calling on their blocks or their communities. They call time after time, but they still don't get responded to. So I say all that to say, this is not a question pointing blame or assessing blame. The question is more geared towards what can we tangibly do as a community, as residents, as business owners, to work with Chicago police to really bring real results and real actions. We hear investigations are ongoing, but we hear investigations are ongoing and ongoing. What can we do? Obviously, if we're not there, we can't be the witnesses to be cooperative with you, but just really want to understand what can we tangibly do. You know, we're building call trees, we're building text trees. We're
Mr.
trying
Moore,
to build.
I think we have the gist of your question.
Okay,
I
I'm
have to
sorry.
cut you off. There's a lot of people that have questions.
I'm
You
sorry.
got the point.
Alderman.
You want to start? I'm sure Alderman King and I want to add to that.
Oh, okay, I'll start. So I really think it comes down to, honestly, I think, you know, a lot of what's been said in regards to the police department is the lack of trust between the community and the police department. And I think it comes down to being able to rebuild that trust and have the community trust that we have their best interest at heart when we move forward to get things done in the community. And that's why, you know, I say community engagement, because I truly believe that's one of the most important things. I think that over these years, we've gotten so far apart from it that now we're asking community for their help. And they're like, listen, you've been gone for so long, why bother? But it's up to us as the police department. We have to build, you know, bridge the divide that's been created, you know. And if we, as long as we can find the citizens who are in the community stakeholders that are willing, I think we can definitely, you know, bridge that divide and start moving in the right direction. This is not going to be solved after we get off this phone call by any stretch of the imagination. It's going to take time, but I mean, I would hope that all of us on this call are willing to put in that time and effort.
Alderman King, do you want?
Yeah, thank you, Alderman Dowell. I would follow up and say, you know, a number of things. I think, you know, we all on the call need to do more, including our offices, the department, the community. I think we can start by, like you said, you know, building more community, forming those block clubs so we have better communication. We do need increased presence. I heard what you said. You know, I agree. Some of the same mitigating factors that they're using downtown, they can use in the neighborhood. So, you know, Alderman Dowell and I are always advocating for more resources. We have gotten some more resources. We still need more resources. You know, you have to couple that with, you know, a lot of the politics that's going on as well. But so more resources. Bringing other stakeholders in the community and holding them accountable, you know, like CHA, their security, making sure they're involved and held accountable, making sure businesses on their street are held accountable, meaning they have their own security, you know, that they are, you know, holding the area around their block and the other businesses accountable. So I think it is everybody. It's an all hands on deck moment. The pandemic has exacerbated, you know, things that we've known for years. But unfortunately, we're seeing this all over the city, which is why we did show the stats to show that it's all over the city. That doesn't make you feel any better, but I guess my answer is that everybody has to do more and be held more accountable, because we have to have all hands on deck. This, to me, is one of the major issues in our city. If we don't solve this, then you know, it's going to be challenging. So thank you, Alderman Dowell.
Thanks. A lot's been said that I agree with. You know, I certainly think When I look at areas in my ward where I see strong community networks, community building, and I think of the GAP Community Organization or the 36 through 3700 block of Prairie or Oakwood Boulevard or the 4800 block of Forestville, right, where those neighbors actually focus a lot on community building and working with the police around issues. Those blocks seem to do better. I definitely agree with the need to focus on the Chicago Housing Authority and their need to increase their attention on a lot of the scattered site housing that we have in the community. Alderman King and I have recently met with the CHA, the new CHA director, to talk about this, and the commander was with us to talk about what they could be doing better in our community. As you looked, several of the incidents happened on blocks where the CHA has a strong presence. So that's something that we definitely need to focus on more. Increased resources. We did get some more new cops. I'm happy about that, but we definitely need more given the increase in population that we're seeing in the Grand Boulevard community. And that's something that we continue to struggle with at the City Council with the police superintendent and others to try to get those resources here. So I think I'll stop there and go to Michelle Troop.
Hello, everyone. Can
Hello?
you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
That's
Hi.
not Michelle.
This is, I'm actually the husband. Yeah. A voice is not that deep today. But listen, you guys are doing your job as aldermen, as commanders, and everyone else. But we haven't heard anything from the mayor. The mayor is one of the most important parts of the city. I haven't seen any text briefings or anything from her about carjacking. It's like she doesn't know what's going on. I don't know if I'm crazy or what's really happening with that.
Message that both Alderman King and I'm sure the commander will deliver to the superintendent to deliver to the mayor. Everything stops at her desk. I mean, the big buck stops at that desk. So heard your suggestion, Ricky, and we'll take it back.
If I could jump in real quick, like Sergeant Credit mentioned before, when they're switching the vehicular hijacking task force back to the areas, now that came from downtown, and I think it's in recognition of the huge spike that we've had citywide with the carjackings. So this is coming from downtown, and they're kind of expediting it. And once we get it going on the ground, I think we'll be able to do some good stuff with it, because it really is a really big problem. But it's citywide. It's not just this area, but just across the city. And one of the I believe one of the meetings we had before, we discussed at how these guys, they'll operate, they don't just stick to one neighborhood. We have guys that like, they'll take a car from far south and then they'll come back around this area and commit a crime. So it truly is a task to undertake, but we can do it. So I just want to put that out there.
Commander Wallace, can you speak to whether or not you find cameras to be something that residents should be investing in, and do they relate to, can they be connected to the the second district?
I believe in cameras. I really do. I think if any resident has the ability to have cameras on their home, I would definitely do that. Currently, we are not piloting the program in the second district, where we have the relationship with Ring, and we're able to get the footage from your Ring camera if a crime occurs. We don't have that currently in our district. It is being piloted in the city. But overall, I really, if you have the ability, put cameras on your home, because not only does it help, it deters, but it also helps the detectives when they do their follow-up as well.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I've seen it work, recently, even where residents handed over video to detectives that, made it easier for them to catch a suspect and, really change an entire block. So I believe in them too. So I just think they're good for a number of reasons.
Robert,
And not just residences, but also businesses also. Those gas stations have very good cameras. So, and the more businesses that have them, they have the resources to put more cameras. We need them. Businesses that are adjacent to vacant lots. I mean, that's where you catch them. The more cameras, the better.
Robert and Pam Johnson.
Hi, this is Robert Johnson. That was part of my question, actually, was whether or not the commander felt that there were adequate cameras, or what other technology can we utilize in our community to try to at least deter or capture some of the criminal activity that's taking place. Because it sounds like we have some problems with folks being uncooperative. So are there other ways that we could bring some of these folks to justice? That was the first part of the question. And then the other part was, I'm not sure that I got an answer that I understood earlier with regard to some of the directives that the officers were given as it relates to 47th Street, because there's a lot of activity on 47th Street. So I'm not sure what the officers are being told, or what specifically the directive is as it relates to some of the activity on 47th Street. And then the last question was, do the majority of the officers that patrol Bronzeville or this district, do they live in the community?
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Commander?
The officers are being given clear directives. It comes down to the officers actually doing their job and what they're directed to do. And it really comes down to supervisors holding them accountable. I'm a true believer in accountability. And I'm hold my lieutenants accountable for the ineffectiveness of my supervisors if my supervisors are ineffective. Because I don't like what I've seen on 47th Street, regardless of the pandemic. That's why I have to come up with a new initiative that puts people out there who want to be out there, who want to be proactive, who want to ensure that the residents of Grand Boulevard and Bronzeville feel welcome when they walk down 47th Street. My aldermen shouldn't have to move a bus stop because officers aren't doing their job. So believe me, I'm very concerned about what the ineffectiveness of the officers on 47th Street. So I'm doing everything I can to address it right now. So when 2021 comes and I'm able to manipulate my officers and where they are and put them in a conducting an initiative that I need to be done correctly. Your other question in regards to the officers living in Bronzeville, I can definitely say a majority of officers do not live in Bronzeville or the 2nd District, but I do have quite a few that do. But it would be the minority of officers who live in the 2nd District or Bronzeville or Grand Boulevard.
Thank you. Jonathan Johnson.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. My question is for Commander Wallace, and I'm trying to figure out what we can do to help you to hold those officers accountable. And the reason I asked that question is that there have been several instances where my neighbors come forward and try to engage your officers, and it feels like we're not being taken seriously, or that the officers don't in fact care. There was a shooting incident on November 20th, which I called the front desk of the 2nd District to provide information, and the officer didn't want to take down the additional details. She told me I would have to come in and give that information. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and I had to almost beg her to give her information on a shooting incident. And so, that's just one example. Another example is where an officer driving through the alley after a shooting, we engage him, and he mentioned to one of my neighbors that's in law enforcement, not CPD, question why you live in this community. You don't have to live here, and kind of said it jokingly. So a lot of these instances give us the sense that the officers don't in fact care, and that our concerns aren't being taken seriously. And in the case of Father's Day weekend, I had over 200 people in the alley, and the officers never responded with over 30 calls. Neighbors couldn't leave their alley. We couldn't leave our homes. And so I want to understand, what we can do to help, you to try and hold your officers accountable, and also what we can do to increase the resourcing in preparation for, we know what's probably going to be an active spring and summer, season.
Thank you for bringing all of that to my attention. And this is the number one response I always have, and I hope that every time I tell someone to do it, they do it. Request a supervisor. A supervisor will have to come out there. They will have to address whatever issues you have faced, whatever complaints you have about an officer and their behavior. It's your right as a citizen of Chicago. If you do not like the police service that you were rendered, request a supervisor. If you felt like the way you were treated was not how you should have been treated, request a supervisor. I beg that you do that, because that is the only way an officer is going to be held accountable for his actions in the field. In regards to when you have information like that, if you're having trouble when you call the desk, you can also ask to speak to the desk sergeant, or you can definitely contact our CAPS office, or you can ask to be transferred to the detective division, because the detective division will be doing the follow-up ultimately. But that's what I need from you and the other citizens. That's how you can help me keep my officers accountable, by requesting a supervisor, because supervisors don't have an option when it comes to responding. In regards to resources, I get my resources at the behest of the superintendent. He lets me know what I'm getting, what I'll be able to work with. We do have our new citywide unit, our community safety team. I do get them on a regular basis on our third watch. So when it comes to certain events, I do get resources. I would like resources in my district on a permanent basis, but it's at the behest of the superintendent.
I just want to underscore your suggestion and ask my constituents and the constituents of the Fourth Ward really to call out for a supervisor when you don't get the service that you expect, or the police don't show, or you're waiting too long for them to show. You must call the supervisor. That's the only way we can hold the officers accountable. And I think we need to increase our calls for service, because the increased calls for service helps Alderman King and I make the justification for more resources. So you must call 911. Question from two specific questions. Do you have any info on the shooting that happened at 42nd and Lake Park a few weeks ago? And another question about an arson that happened in the beauty supply store on 47th Street. Commander Wall.
I don't have any information, any follow-up on 42nd and Lake Park. In regards to 47th and the beauty supply on 47th Street, there's no other information that's been given to me in regards to how and why it started. There's a lot of speculation, but I do not have any additional information than what I was initially given when the incident occurred.
And I have a couple of questions related to ShotSpotter. Can you just briefly talk about how it works? And do you respond to every alert that ShotSpotter gives you?
So ShotSpotter is a technology that picks up the sound of gunfire whenever a gun is discharged. My office or my officers in my district, they're notified they get the alerts, They notify the dispatcher then dispatches a car to go to the area where the shot spotter went off. So we respond to every single shot spotter alert.
Okay, looking at the chat box, Deneen Sanders and James Hutchinson.
Good evening. Thank you all for holding this forum. I just wanted to, while I appreciate, the disclosures with respect to the metrics in connection with the shootings and the carjackings, these are crimes that happen. The crime is not new. What I would like to know is, has CPD looked into, I know you mentioned the shot spotter technology. Has CPD looked into any additional predictive technologies that exists in your space to assist with mitigating or eradicating the crime that's happening in this area? Because while it is informative, I'm just deep down with the metrics and the report out of the metrics of all the crimes and what's happening. I really would like to learn, or like, you guys to speak to some of the other things that you're doing.
Well, in regards to the other metrics, in regards to predictive analytics, I cannot say for certain that what they are currently working on, because anything that we're utilizing right now is what we're utilizing. So in regards to predictive analytics, we're on a district level, we're not utilizing it on any kind of daily basis. Now, headquarters could possibly be using it, but I can only speak from my standpoint and what we do in the district.
So what would be required what can we do as a community to ensure that, we have those resources available to us? When you say you can't, it's not currently being utilized, what can be done so that it is utilized? I mean, if you really want to eradicate some of this crime and get to the bottom of this stuff, as we know, processes have to be evaluated and improved upon. Again, these types of crimes, they're not new. And, you have to look at some point. You can't keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So if you want to get a different result, at some point you have to take a step back and evaluate, your processes and your technologies and see, and see how to operationalize them.
No, and I agree. And I'm not saying that the department is not. I'm a district commander. There are things that possibly go on in headquarters that I'm not aware of, or that they're currently working on, and they're trying to see exactly how will it affect us, how will it benefit us, how will it help us make communities safer. Like I said, I can't say for sure that they're not currently working on that. I just know currently at the district level, we're not currently using predictive analytics.
Right. I guess what I'm asking is what can we do as a community? If you're not aware of it, and if you don't know what they're working on, I think that, we as, taxpayers and people in our community, we should, have access to that information. So if there's something that we need to do to assist with that.
Ms. Sanders, that's not a problem. If you send an email to either myself or to Alderman King, we definitely can look into the different types of technology that the CPD is considering. Sometimes when they were looking at ShotSpotter, we didn't get the rollout right away because we did not have the kind of shooting crime incidents that those other districts had, but we have it now. And I'm sure that there are other technologies that the police department are looking at, and we certainly can provide that information.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Hutchinson, followed by Byron Williams. James Hutchinson, Byron Williams,
Hi, this is Byron Williams. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Commander, I just wanted to follow up on the question around the fire on 47th Street. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that incident per se, but it was an incident where ATF officers stopped by my house to view my footage, and clearly saw a perp with a gas can walking towards the building. So I'm just wondering, is there any update or status on that particular incident? It was a fire about a month and a half ago at in between Michigan and Indiana, that building right there where a lot of the laundering takes place.
Yes, I am aware of it, and with the ATF being involved, which then makes it a federal investigation, I don't have any further information on it, on the course of their investigation.
Okay, so that's what you meant when you said you don't have any further information. Understand. Okay. That was it, Alderman.
thank you very much, Mr. Williams. A question from Uguchi Ufaha. What's the average length of time from when an incident occurs to when the case is closed? How long does it take you to close the case, Commander Smith?
That question is actually tough to follow because all cases are different. It depends on the initial assistance we get from the victim, or if there's video or whatever. It could go quickly, or it might run stale very quickly. There's no, I don't want to give a time frame because every crime is different. And one of the things that we tell victims when we're following up is that you have to give us time because we have to do these things right. So, but what I will say that after about 30 days, if we don't have anything new, then that case will probably end up being suspended. But if we're working on it, we got some kind of lead that's going, then it might take a while. So it really does depend.
Thank you. Lois Joseph.
And then Alderman, I think Mr. Foreman has some answers as it relates to the police board and what folks can do after this constituent.
Mr. Foreman. All right, we'll move on. Alois, I forgot her last name now. Oh. Lois Joseph.
Alderman Dowell, this is Guion Foreman.
Guion Foreman, okay, I called.
Alderman Dowell, Alderman King. So to everyone, I'm the president of the Chicago Police Board and also a resident here in the neighborhood. And the Chicago Police Board meetings are definitely, it's a resource that as a community, I would like to see us use a lot more. Typically, we only get about 9 to 12 people participating on a monthly basis. And it definitely is a function of the groups who come, very similar to this meeting, and people who are proactive about specific issues. It could be specific issues about crime. It could be specific issues about the technology that we're using. But we were doing this even before the consent decree, but with the consent decree, when there are specific questions that's asked, each month CPD gets back to us with specific answers about those issues that are brought up at the previous month's meeting. And I've seen it myself where groups of community members come together focused on a particular issue, and just kind of stay on top of it month after month. And so it definitely is a resource that I would suggest that that our communities utilize. The meetings are held on the third Thursdays of the month. Because of COVID, we've been doing it via Zoom. All of the details are on our website, chicagopoliceboard.org.
Thank you very much, Dion. Peggy Gale. All right, Ms. Gale doesn't seem to be here, so.
Oh, no, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I just wanted to know, will there be additional officers on the street tomorrow, December 31st, due to the historical nature of guns being fired in the area and it being New Year's Eve? And if there's anything the citizens can do to protect themselves, because I don't think that the shot spotter is going to protect us.
Good question.
There will be additional officers on the street during the peak hours of New Year's Eve. The best thing I can, advise any citizen to do, especially with the way this year has been, is stay in the house, and stay away from the windows when people start firing these guns, because these projectiles do have to come down, and quite often they come down and they can hit the wrong person. But we're going to do everything we can. But I also need, I want my officers to be safe too, because they're going to be out there too. And I don't want any of them to be hit with these projectiles as they come out the air as well. But we're going to do everything we possibly can to keep everybody safe tomorrow night.
Okay, well, we're coming up on the end of our meeting, and I'm looking through the questions here. Here's one for you, Commander. This is a specific one. There have been several incidents of shots fired around 43rd and Langley related to narcotics. What's the status of that investigation, and can we have additional patrolling along 43rd?
Are we talking about? Well, I am not sure if you're talking about the shots fired in general. I'm sure that it was investigated and coded out at that time. I can definitely request for a special attention along 43rd and Langley to have increased police presence over there during the day.
Comment, Commander, about your people liking your old school vision that you shared. People want to see more policemen and police women outside of their cars engaging with the community, including bicycling around the neighborhood, weather permitting. What's your focus on police walking the beat, riding bikes?
Well, it's what we have to get back to. That's how I was when I was a patrolman. That's how you built the relationships. That's how people trusted you. That's how people told you what was going on and who to look out for. I think it's very, very necessary. And yes, we have a much younger generation of police officers right now, but I think if you want to be one of the best police officers, I think getting to know the people that you serve is the most important thing, regardless. And even though you may not be from this community and you might feel uncomfortable, you need to break out of that shell and get comfortable.
Hey, Alderman,
Yes.
can I jump in just to follow up on 43rd and Langley? I was on mute for a second, but yeah, I think this is another example of kind of the entire community coming together. So 47th and Langley, between there, Evans, still ongoing issues, but Bonner Properties, we met with them to hold them more accountable. They're putting cameras on their buildings. They're making sure their properties are cleaned more often, and just kind of holding them more accountable. We've also talked to CHA about what they can do to be held more accountable about one of their buildings that's close by, and the Block Club over there is coming together. and the commander has already put resources over there. So I just think, like I said, we need to come at it from all angles, and I think that's a good example. And hopefully we'll see some improvement over there soon.
Thank you, Alderman King. Just two more questions, Commander, and then we'll end this. One is from Cameron Hardiman, who is asking, do you see any correlation between the vacant lots in our wards and crime?
I think it depends on which vacant lots. If it's vacant lots where people meet up and park cars and hang out, most definitely. What I've really been trying to stay on top of, and especially in contact with Alderman Dowell, is the vacant lots that are city owned, what we can possibly do just to keep people from hanging out in them, because I think that breeds, they can breed trouble, but not necessarily. But if that's what you feel, and if that's what you see, and you see crowds gathering, or you see illegal behavior taking place, by all means, call 911 so we can come out, we can investigate, and go further with it.
And yes, I wanted to add that a couple of things. One, Alderman King and I and members of the Black Caucus, where we have a lot of vacant lots, have been working to get a new contract put in place for weed cutting that does a much better job than what you're currently seeing in the ward right now. The second thing is that I know I put aside money to put signs up that deter people from parking or parking their cars and other vehicles on their lot, so we can tow them quicker. And I would just encourage residents, if you have a vacant lot that's an issue, to please let us know so we can put more attention on that, see who the owner is. We have been successful, not as successful as we want to be, but we have been successful in getting some private owners to fence in their lot. We just recently got the one at 43rd in Michigan fenced in after many tries with that owner. But we have had some success. So if you have a vacant lot that's particularly egregious and you want us to put some attention on it, please send us an email and we'll look into it. Somebody else just, okay. All right, I'm gonna take these last three and that's it. Glennis Green, Nicole Terzich, and Regina S. And then we'll close. Glennis Green.
Alderman Dowell. Commander, you mentioned you were doing some reorganization for 2021 with folks on the beat. In response to Marcelia's question on, or whoever's question about people being from the neighborhood, officers being from the neighborhood. I just want to know if there is a reorganization of officers on the street in 2021, is it possible to put the ones who live in the neighborhood and beat on the streets as opposed to folks who don't? Because I really believe that folks who live in the neighborhood are less likely to be negligent and reckless in their own community.
I can definitely take a poll and see what officers on what watches live in the district, and see if they'd be willing to police on their beat. For some officers that might be a little uncomfortable being directly that close to their home and policing, but for others it may be a welcome situation for them. But that's definitely something I can look into.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Regina, Nicole Terzich. Nicole.
I'm going to opt off the call.
Okay, Regina S. to close us for the night.
Hi, Alderman Dow and Alderman King. Thank you so much, also Commander, for hosting this meeting. We actually got to my question earlier, but I did have another one. I'm wondering if you see a correlation between the increased speeding in our
Can you speak,
neighborhoods. I'm
can you
sorry.
speak up, Regina?
Sure, I'll try to speak up louder. Can you hear me now?
Better.
Better? Okay. I was just wondering if you see an increased correlation between speeding throughout the neighborhood and the increase in crime. I'm noticing a lot of speeding and running through stop signs, particularly between 42nd and 43rd on Vincennes. And my family also was, a victim of a really bad hit and run accident with three parked cars in front of our home. One was totaled by a hit and run driver. He totaled three cars. He hit totaled one, and the two hit the other two behind it parked, and he left the scene. So I'm just wondering if you see an increase in speeding and violence as well. Thank you.
I don't know the speeding. It may not necessarily be. I don't see the correlation necessarily to the violent. Well, let me say there could be some correlation, but it's one of those things that you'd have to investigate and track it all the way back. What I have been seeing more speeding and stolen vehicles, whether it's been taken in a carjacking or just a straight up motor vehicle theft, especially the high end supercharged vehicles that have been stolen, because the police are not going to chase those vehicles because it's too much of a danger for everybody involved. It's a danger for the citizen. It's a danger for the police officer. So my officers have been told not to even, if they go to engage these vehicles and they take off and they speed off and run from the police, my officers have been instructed, do not follow them, do not chase them, because the last thing we want to do is for anybody to lose their life because the police are trying to catch up to a speeding vehicle. Overall, whether or not these speeding cars is relation to crime, I cannot say for certain, but I do know that we have had those incidents of the speeding vehicles that have been stolen, like I said, through carjackings and whatnot. And like I said, these vehicles are extremely fast, and it's just not something I want anyone to risk their life doing, or risk any citizens in the district's lives.
Thank you, Commander. Alderman King, would you close this out, and I'll follow up with a short closing statement?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. Alderman Dow and your office, your chief of staff, Allison, my chief of staff. I know James has been working hard, and the commanders for coming out. Thank you all for coming together, and especially for the residents. I think the takeaway for me for tonight is there was a question, I think, about the increase in crime. I do think a lot of it has to do with what's going on with COVID, people having a lot more time on their hands. That means criminals have a lot more time on their hands. I think there's not a coincidence between, there is a coincidence between that increase. That being said, I think we all had a lot going on during that time, the police, our office, you as residents, and we just have to double down and recommit on different levels. And so I know Alderman Dow and our offices are up to that task. I know the commanders are up to that task. I know you as residents have been coming together, forming block clubs, doing all those things. We are trying to hold, like I said, CHA accountable. We've had movement there. We've had movement with property owners, but we're doubling down on our efforts. And I think as a community, we all have to do better. And please continue to hold our offices accountable. You've got our emails and our phone number. We will continue to push hard for resources, but also just to follow up and make sure that all these different moving parts are held accountable. And I think if we continue to do that, we're going to see a difference in 2021. But thank you all for coming out. We appreciate your presence and your questions, and we'll continue to work hard on behalf of the community. Thank you, Alderman Dow.
Thank you, Alderman King. I want to also thank Commander Wallace and Commander Smith and Sergeant Kirkpatrick, and Alderman King, Prentice, and Allison, Robert, and James for all of your help in pulling this meeting together. I especially want to thank the residents for coming out. I'm heartened by the turnout here. You know, Grand Boulevard is a really important community, and we have a lot of work to do to take it to the next level. And I think we need to all be rowing in the same direction. For me, I think I would encourage people, while we're in this pandemic, to take the time to go to your virtual beat meetings so that you can, you know, take that hour out of your day so you can talk about what's going on in your block or in your particular community, meet some of your neighbors. We need to spend more time doing community building within our own blocks and getting to know our neighbors and neighbors who are different from us or the same. You know, we need to spend more time coming together as a community and then working with the police as well. I really encourage you to hold the police accountable. If you see a police sitting back there near a park, not doing anything, sleep, write that number down and let the police department know that there's a problem. There may be a problem there. If you feel uncomfortable sharing information with the police, you can also share that information with our respective aldermanic officers. As Alderman King said, we continue to fight for additional resources. We were pleased to get more this week. It certainly isn't enough, but it was better than what we have, and we will continue to seek more resources for our second district and other districts that make up our ward. In closing, everyone have a happy New Year's. Some people say we shouldn't have this meeting the day before New Year's, but it's good that we spend the last days of the year focusing on our community. So thank you all for attending, and see you in 2021. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Alderman Dow.
Thank you, Alderman King.